All right. Yeah. My PC is so slow today. All right. So, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, whatever time that you are watching this my video. My name is A.Kaburi, and in this model, we shall be looking at learning assessment from understanding design, and that is comprised of chapter 7 and chapter 8 of the book by Wiggins and McTighe. So, an overview of this particular model is that we shall, like I said, we are looking at assessment design, and we are looking at thinking like an assessor. That is the first thing that we look at. We'll look at valid and effective assessment criteria, a tool in action, and useful digital tools for assessment, and finalize it with our concluding thoughts. So, by way of introduction, we want to look at thinking like an assessor. So, we must be guided in mind when we are designing our instruction that at the end of the day there should be an assessment, and we must begin with the end in mind, that is planning for assessment before our instruction, just like we did in our with our backward design, that we need to think of our outcome before we look at the experiences or the strategies to put in place, the activities, as well as the methods or activities for implementation, and then that will result in what we want to achieve. So, Wicks and Mark said teachers are designers and are essential act of our profession in the design of curriculum and learning experiences to meet specific purposes. So we use our assessment to gather evidence for understanding, not just for recall. So we want to know what students or learners have understood in the way of evidence, in the way of how they can apply it to real life situation to solve problems, but not just for recall or to pass standardized test scores. And in such a way, if we are thinking like an assessor, then this is how we are supposed to go about our instructional strategies or instructional planning. So the assess factor understanding, if we are focusing that as a way of planning our assessment, the assess facets of this understanding, and that is to explain, to interpret, to apply, to be perspective, empathize, and to self knowledge. So all these facets of understanding are very essential and are very important to what our learners will be able to do with their knowledge or whatever they achieve from our instruction or our teaching and learning. So for them to be able to apply, first of all, they need to be able to explain whatever not, and that is not only enough. They need to also be able to interpret whatever they are explaining. They need to have a self knowledge. They need to have a different perspective or an innovative perspective of how they want to apply the content or the knowledge that they have achieved as an individual. And each and every one or each and every student have individual differences and have way that they can empathize whatever knowledge that they have achieved or acquired in real life situations. Now, we want to look at how we can design effective assessment. And we have different kinds of assessments. We have the performance tags, we have the robust and informal checks, and as well as the quizzes. And but what I know is that from where I'm coming from, most people are used to the traditional method of assessment. That is just to check whatever learners can be able to recall in the form of memorization, and in some cases try to pass standardized tests at the end of the day. That is the main goal. But if we want to design effective assessment, we must go beyond just recall, but to be able to know what students are able to understand and able to apply to real life situation, because that is the main target. So the way we should guide ourselves is what will be sufficient and revealing evidence of our understanding. What is it that when we see in our learners or in our students, we're able to know that this person really understand what we are doing. And Waze had a quote that what is worth assessing is assessing well. What's worth assessing is worth assessing well. So if we see that this is worth whatever content we see to be worthy of being assessed, then we have to do it and do it well. So there are tips here that we want to look at as ways that we can have effective assessment. And number one of them is to use multiple methods. We should think about it, multiple methods in which we can do this assessment or to achieve our understanding goal. Number two is that we should have to be specific. We have to set specific objectives. We have talked about it initially in other models about setting specific or smart objectives. They must be specific, they must be measurable, they must be time bound, they must be realistic. And this is what we term to be specific goals. We must stick to our goals. We shouldn't go beyond whatever we want to achieve at the end of the day. And we must eschew biases. Even though each and everyone has our biases, we must try to reduce those biases in order to meet our goals, but not only focus on our personal achievements. We must also engage learners in whatever we are doing. If we want to have effective assessment, let them in a way or would contribute to whatever assessment that you have for them. Record the results and just take notice of whatever students have achieved, what they are lacking, and what areas they need to improve, so that in subsequent assessment we can be able to address them. And we have to also give them feedback. Feedback is very, very important. And I have come to realize that in those days when I was teaching, we were only giving feedback when students were not getting things right. But progressing in my academic career or ladder, I've come to realize that we not only give assessment when students don't do well, when they are still even do well, they still need feedback. And that brings us to the last tip, that is to modify our instructional strategies. So if we go through all these steps and realize that we can reflect on whatever we have done and be able to come to a conclusion that this and this is what I need to do to take off from my instruction. This is what I need to add. This is where I need to improve to make sure that I achieve my end goals. Now we want to this section we want to look at chapter 8, that is the highlights on the rubrics. Now we have talked about Bloom's taxonomy, and rubrics are essential to create clarity and fairness when it comes to assessment. It's very, very important because and that is what will let us be fair to our learners or our students who we are teaching, or we are taking them through this teaching and learning process. And it can be holistic, it can be analytical, that is broken down into bright criteria, which is usually recommended. And holistic is usually an overall impression of what students are able to do and what they are not able to do. But analytically, it is broken down by criteria and it's usually recommended. And the benefits of this include fast scoring. It must be the objectivity and student transparency. That is why the analytical is usually recommended. And this rubrics, as I said earlier on, they are they can also be categorized into different kinds or different types. And we have cultural responsive rubrics, we have holistic rubrics, we have single point rubrics, and we have analytical rubrics. And I have said that the analytical rubrics are the ones that are usually recommended, and for a reason that they are fast scoring, they are objective, and then it also creates transparency within the students and the teachers. Assessment criteria and validity. Now, we want to say that valid goals are goals that align with our main objectives, and reliability is in terms of the consistency or whatever we are doing, and fairness is accessible to all. So when we talk about criteria and validity in terms of our assessment, then we are saying that it is accurately assessing the learning objectives. So if we want our assessment to be valid, then our assessment must accurately address our learning objectives or our learning motives. We must be fair in terms to all our learners, like I've mentioned earlier on, and for us to be reliable, it must be understood by others. And the last part is what we call to the authentic, and the authentic has to do with the true discipline that students, that is in terms of students' own work. That is what we term as the authenticity of our work. Now, we want to look at digital tools, digital tools for learning assessment. Now, there are different tools which I think by now most of us we are aware of, because we are in a digital age, and each of them have different things that they do. We know of Kahoot, which is very popular, and each of them have different things that they do. We have learning platforms like Moodle, which all of us have used. We have been using. We have the social media. We have resource development. We have presentation platforms. We have course tutoring. We have the web blogging. We have note taking, which all know. We have the emailing platforms, social networking that I've said, different kinds, and Padlet, which are used for instruction. All these are have different features and different things that they use for the assessment. But the major thing that we need to understand is that these digital tools, they have different features, and each of them can use them differently. And in terms of our assessment, we must choose the one that we are conversant with in line with our objectives or our instructions for us to achieve our goals. Now, tools in our settler. Now, I want to move on to a tool that is called Virtual Lab because I am in science education. So, I would like to talk about a learning tool or a platform, a digital tool that is mostly used in science ed, and that's why I'm focusing on this virtual labs or the virtual labs. And these are used to stimulate real lab environments and guide upon open-ended expression. And this are used widely across the world, and you can create your lab experiments there. It offers inbuilt assessment and activity log and do measurement. It supports inquiry-based learning, and it tackles all the six facets of understanding that we talked about. That is application, interpretation, self-knowledge, real, and you can do it wherever you are. So this is one spotlight tool or digital tool that is used in science education that I've decided to bring on board in this presentation to let us know that I know that this is my field. Other people in humanities, in English, in math, may also have different platforms that are used in the form of assessment. And like I said, this one can easily give you, in terms of assessment, can easily give you feedback. It's easily scored. Students are able to get their feedback wherever they are easily without any challenge. Now, Vein Labs in action. So, assessing student understanding of scientific process. For example, we can do photosynthesis, we can do circuit design, and assign these VLab modules align with the lesson objectives. So you can plan your lab or your experiment in line with your objectives that you want to. And students are able to submit digital reports. They use assessment data of labs in their dashboard in terms of for admission and other stuff. It also supports performance in terms of formative or summative assessment. And experimentation is done even without being in the lab and makes it easily accessible to learners. Now, benefits of tech enhanced assessment. So some of the benefits include, but not limited to, immediate feedback intervention when we use this digital assessment tools. It increases student engagement, like the gamification in Kahoot. It helps you to be able to, it increases student interest to participate in the assessment. Easier data tracking and differentiation. It's also inclusive and accessible to all, like I mentioned earlier on. Now, the concluding thoughts about this our assessment model is that thoughtful assessment design begins with clear goals. We must have clear goals before we can have a thoughtful assessment. Without clear goals, it will be very difficult for us to have clear assessment. And technology will always enhance the way we assess. It will not replace the pedagogy or whatever instruction that we want to do, but it will enhance it. So what we have to do is to get the clear objectives, try to set, use or select a tool or digital tool that aligns with what objective or goal we want to achieve. Then we have to use the tools that match our teaching context and our student needs. We shouldn't just select tools that are needed in the context of what we want to teach, and then it will make our lesson or our instruction or assessment very, very, very effective. Assessment is not just about testing, it's about learning. So if we say, is it when the learners have learned that the teacher has taught, or is when the teacher has taught that the learners learn? This is a question that we all need to answer ourselves. So this is my presentation for you, and these are the references that I use for this particular model on assessment. Thank you very much for watching.